Welcome to Ecommerce Revamped, where we break down the hottest trends, insider tips, and strategies shaping the future of e-commerce. Powered by Miva, the engine behind seamless online stores. Now here's your host, Rob Stanley.
Hey everyone, welcome to another great episode of Ecommerce Revamped. We got a legal one today. So if you've started an e-commerce business or you're in an e-commerce business or selling online of any type, there's always going to be a legal question that comes to mind. Good friend of mine, also, I have to disclose, also one of my lawyers that I use, is Paul Rafelson. He's with SellerBasics, and he has his own law firm. And we're going to be talking today about legal strategies to protect your e-commerce business. That's a pretty wide area. So let's get Paul into the studio here. Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Hey, Rob, good to see you. How you been?
Yeah, doing good. Great to see you also. So Paul's got a very vast knowledge, and specifically in the e-commerce area. I shouldn't say specifically. One of the main areas that he actually is really good at and is really involved in is the e-commerce industry. It could be Amazon, could be probably selling even on eBay or anything like that. So retail arbitrage, all that. So there's a lot of really good questions that come up that are legal issues. And so, Paul, let's actually kick it off. What is, when it comes to the e-commerce industry, what is a question you get asked a lot from, legally from e-commerce sellers?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's all over the board, right? And it depends on what their focus is. So, if we're talking to a brand owner, they're more likely going to talk about maybe challenges specific to their product niche, maybe compliance issues, maybe, intellectual property is really important, trademark, copyright, patent opportunities potentially. And then, of course, because we do so much of what you call mergers and acquisitions, which is just a fancy way of saying helping our clients sell their business legally, not as a broker, but like helping clients go through the legal process of selling their business. We see a lot, we know a lot, we certainly understand valuations, and we've helped our clients, with evaluations. And obviously that's something they want to know about is maximizing value. If they're eyeing an exit, or even if an exit's 5 to 10 years, they want to know what they can do. And then, a lot of times structuring too, are they tax efficient? Are they efficient for taking on third-party investment? So it just runs the gamut, man.
Absolutely. Paul does cover a lot of things. And like I said, a lot in the e-commerce world, a lot of people do go to him. I've gone to him before for a lot of different things, actually. So you did talk about like maximizing your e-commerce value. So how to maximize e-commerce valuation? Like, what are some steps that either the seller needs to do or the e-commerce seller? And what are kind of the things you guys do on your end to help people with those e-commerce valuations?
It's funny. It's a great question. And it's one, like I said, we get a lot. And, people are always sort of running and rushing and saying, I need a Delaware corp and I need to do this or that or whatever the latest YouTube. And honestly, like that's sort of semantics. It's kind of important, but, very easy to fix. I mean, to me, when you're talking about an e-commerce company, you're talking about, intellectual property, right? You're talking about a physical product or a service, but it's a brand, right? You're differentiating yourselves from your competitors through branding. And so what I actually find most interesting about a lot of website sellers who are not on Amazon, and I find this really interesting, is that they forget to get trademarks. They go buy the domain, world's greatest, breadslicer.com, and they're selling like crazy, and they never actually went and got the trademark. And that can be a huge issue when you go to sell your business. So I find IP to be, intellectual property to be the most, obviously important. Then there's just compliance, making sure your product's complying with the laws, that you understand your state and local, not just your federal, ensuring your tariffs are correct if you're importing products. I mean, it's all about just sort of complying with the rules, because what happens in an M&A transaction or an exit is, the buyer's going to buy your business based on you making certain promises about the condition of your business, right? These are known formally as reps and warranties. So really, thinking about auditing, if you will, and this is something we do help our clients do, take a look at your business today and say, okay, what do I need to think about to be sort of exit ready? Even if it's 5 years from now, there are things you should be doing today to get ready. And it's a comprehensive list. I've touched on a few subjects, but that's really what businesses should be focused on if they're serious about wanting to sell their business and grow their business one day.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of mergers, acquisitions, M&As, you just mentioned one of the issues you've seen or ways they need to get ready. What are some of the other common pitfalls you see with people when it comes to an M&A situation?
Absolutely. Again, it's understanding the scope of what you're doing. So sometimes you're just doing the thing and you've never really you've never really investigated it. Maybe you've just kind of, bootstrapped this business together. You took a bunch of pictures from the web, you took a product, you didn't really, you never really got serious about it. You just kind of made a lot of steps. This happens, right? That this sort of happens. And now all of a sudden a buyer wants to look at your business and they're kind of looking at it with well, how, on the one hand, they're here to help clean that up. On the other hand, it may raise issues that, they're worried about not, whether they can do whether your business is growable because you never kind of took those steps to solidify your position. I'll give you an example. Taxes has become a really hot topic. It's been a topic for the last 6 or 7 years, less so for the Amazon sellers, more so for the Miva type sellers, right? The websites, if you will. How to collect sales tax, when it's appropriate, do you follow the thresholds, right? Buyers get scared because if the taxes aren't collected, then that can be a subject of a holdback or some other type of issue where you have to make disclosures to the government to try to clean that up. On the other hand, the argument may be that you shouldn't have to do that because the burden of doing it is too expensive. So there's just a ton of issues that, tend to pop up when you're going through. It's hard to just isolate one because we've seen so many. I will say, from a standpoint of opportunity, I think, the more you can be less Amazon dependent if you're a products company today is really helpful. I think Amazon companies are they had their moment in the sun and they're still doing great. But I think in terms of valuation, people want to see more building an independent business without the platforms, I think is a great way to help build value in your business. What else can I say?
How about Paul? How about this? If I think you hit on a lot of good points there, and coming back around to like the M&A type stuff. If I understand, I'm not super into the M&A. I only got to sell a couple of times myself, and I didn't go through any really big type sales things. But what kind of deal structures benefit some of these e-commerce owners versus other ones?
I mean, so in terms of e-commerce companies, and we see varieties because we work with agencies, we work with service companies, we work with product companies. Structures will vary to some degree. Most likely, if it's U.S. based, we'll typically see an asset deal where the assets are acquired. Valuations vary, right? So service companies, computer service companies in particular, so like a company that just provides a subscription online service, SaaS business. I don't remember the word SaaS for a moment. Will trade at a much higher multiple than sort of a general products company. But a general products company might trade at a higher multiple than, say, like a services or agency company, which may require less upfront cash and more performance-based compensation later on, which is always riskier. It kind of varies based on what you're working on. In terms of structure, like I said, it doesn't really matter that much in most of these deals how you're structured. It's we can usually work around it if there's ever any issues. But it's just nice to have, like I said, it's nice to have your ducks in a row. If you have 1,000 images on your website, right? You should probably have that catalog, those images. Where did you get them from? Did you get them from Shutterstock? We probably need to start inventorying those products. If you have a ton of work product on your website that was prepared by people in Fiverr, we probably need to start gathering all that information. We may need to get certain documents from the authors to assure your ownership of that content. So it's more about just kind of, the substance of the business in terms of just, getting it ready than this, the structure is the structure. You can't, we can move things around. S Corps are a little harder to move things around than LLCs that are not S Corp elected, but there's always ways to move things around if you really need to in most instances. But if I'm understanding your question right, it's just sort of, it's a holistic 360 approach that you have to take to getting your company ready for exit. And I speak, just to give you a little bit of background on our experience, we're not a huge law firm. I came from big legal experience. I worked for, Microsoft, Walmart, GE. And so that's sort of where I come from. But, this e-commerce business, law practice, I started sort of by accident when I wrote a blog post. But, my point being is that, you gotta have to take this stuff seriously. If you want to maximize your value to get to exit, it's really important that you do this stuff. And from our perspective as a small law firm, I think we're over $500 million in closing cash for our clients received in terms of deals that we've closed for our clients. So we've seen a lot in the and that's just in the e-commerce space, right? Whether that's Amazon website, eBay, Walmart, all the various combinations. We've done this a lot. And I just think people can't, there's no time like the present to start cataloging these things, because if you wait until, you're in due diligence, you get a letter of intent, you're going to find yourself just rushing to do these things. And it's an absolute nightmare if you can do it. And it may tick off the buyer that it's not done.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And people that are, if you're thinking of selling or you're looking to start selling, I'm going to also suggest, whether you're listening or watching the podcast here, go back to the last episode before this. We had Cat Forge on. They went over a lot of highlights on, how to prepare your taxes, get things ready to be able to sell. And then I would obviously get Paul involved too, if you're looking to sell early on, because you got to have that paperwork in place. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back from the break, I want to talk to Paul a little bit more about some of these IP mistakes that sellers are making. And then we're going to also get into some patent and legal stuff and FTC. There's a whole lot coming up right after this commercial break.
Ready to revamp your online store? Miva's e-commerce platform offers powerful tools and flexible solutions that grow with your business. From design to checkout, Miva has you covered. Don't just sell, stand out. Check out miva.com/podcast to start building your dream store today.
Yeah, so head on over to miva.com/podcast. We got a lot of free downloadables, some cool ebook stuff. So yeah, take a look at that. It's up on the screen. It's miva.com/podcast. So right before the break, I was talking with Paul, and we were going to talk a little bit about some more IP mistakes that sellers are making. So once again, I have Paul Rafelson from SellerBasics, and we're talking legal strategies to protect your e-commerce business. So Paul, take it away as far as what are some of the other IP mistakes that sellers are making? You covered some of them already.
Right. So yeah, appreciate that. So IP mistakes that we often see, which we see a lot of, failure to procure the right trademark, failure to procure a trademark at all. This is the thing that I think drives me crazy is website sellers just kind of you see when you sell on Amazon, you're forced to think about your trademark because there's this thing called brand registry, which most of you probably know. If you've ever dealt with Amazon, obviously you definitely know it. So there's that sort of forces you. But when we have companies that are, their web presence is not so Amazon centric, or even if it's Amazon, maybe what they sell on Amazon isn't their own branded stuff. They get these cool domains, but they never really acquire the appropriate trademark to support that, and that can create a lot of confusion, a lot of problems. So we always recommend getting the trademark for your business. The other thing people do is they don't get enough trademarks. If you think about a company, like take your average sort of cereal company like Kellogg's, right? You think of the main brand as Kellogg's cereal, but you got, Cocoa Pops. Actually, I think that's General Mills, but Cocoa Krispies, which arguably could be descriptive, but you get my point. Corn Pops.
Yeah.
But you've got all these sort of brandings, right? You've got these characters, these logos. You got all this sort of branding that, people don't go and secure that branding. With trademark law, you do have what we call a common law right to sort of, use the mark and claim priority based on when you used it. But that can be at risk if you don't take action to actually register that trademark with the government, with the USPTO. So, we've seen this a lot, especially with the Amazon sellers, where they've got, 10 killer products or 5 killer products, and they only brand registered one of their brands. Meanwhile, the other products have really cool branding names, but turns out in some cases they may not actually have the right to use that branding. And that's their killer product. Now, the cool thing about having your own website is you can potentially rebrand without too much disaster. As you know, with Amazon, you cannot. It's really impossible to rebrand without losing all your progress. It's sort of like starting from zero, because you lose all the reviews and all those things. Again, cataloging IP is just a basic thing. Like, along the way, people hire freelancers left and right, but they're not taking inventory of what the freelancers are doing. And you need that because you need to show that you own that stuff. And if the freelancer is working for you, you may need what's called an assignment of rights or work made for hire. You need something to show that this is the person who authored that, and this is what they created. And then again, to apply for copyright, you need to show authorship. Who was the original creator? Not just that you own the work, but who actually did who did the art, who did the project. So just tracking that stuff, because as the companies get bigger, again, they just lose track of this stuff left and right. And then on the patent side, I'd say the biggest mistake people make, it's two-sided, right? One is not checking for patents, but, which can be a disaster, right? You can have a business that can go for 5 years, you're doing great, and suddenly a patent comes in and it's a nightmare to deal with. Or on the flip side, you rush to market with this really cool, innovative product, and you didn't consider patents, right? The problem with that is that, once you sort of introduce the product, not to market, just commercially show it, make it sort of, so it's different than trademarks, different than using it in commerce. But once you sort of make the product known to the public, it's publicly disclosed, you have 1 year essentially to file for that patent. And in the meantime, if somebody else comes with a similar product, you could actually even lose that right to file for that 1 year. But it's certainly after that 1 year, you're dead. Like that your ability to patent that product is gone. So, and patent's a very powerful tool. Now, it's expensive to obtain a patent. It's expensive to enforce a patent, but it can be a very valuable tool. I've noticed this dichotomy, and I struggle. I find that there's website sellers who are good at designing products and patents, but are terrible at selling. And then there's people who are really good at selling that don't really have a lot of like original IP. And it's sort of like, it's funny to see, because you can spend a lot of your money on a very cool patent, but that patent doesn't really have value until you prove it in the marketplace, unless it's just something really, we're talking about general consumer products here, not breakthrough medicines, right? So in that context, it's really hard to say, hey, my company's worth $10 million because I've got this cool patent. Rarely does it ever work. Execution is a big part of it. So I don't want to give the impression that just getting a patent is enough, because I've seen companies where they do that and it's just like nothing's going their way.
Yeah. How about this, Paul? What kind of legal risks have you seen when e-commerce sellers start to expand internationally?
Legal risks internationally. Well, I mean, again, it opens up a number of doors, right? So depending on the nature of the product, it could be compliance issues. For example, if you sell a product in Canada, you better make sure that the product is, in French and English, right? You need that dual language. So just kind of missing the compliance aspects of selling overseas is a common issue. I'm trying to think what else. VAT collection can be a disaster. Like most foreign countries use this value-added tax system, which is sort of a different than our sales tax system, but kind of, seems the same, but it's actually quite different. So that can be an issue. And then just obviously intellectual property, different countries, you have a trademark in the United States, let's say, that doesn't guarantee you the right to use a trademark in China, in Europe, in the UK, right? So to really, and this brings me back to my point, is like, if you're thinking about this is a product that should sell worldwide, early on in the process, you need to think about obtaining worldwide trademarks, right? About, at least Europe, Australia, the big ones that you want. And China too, for protective purposes, because China can, if there is this sort of game that happens in China where sometimes people register their trademarks in the US, they start selling, and then they get a letter from a company in China that's planning to register your trademark in China, which can create complications, theoretically for your manufacturing, and certainly your ability to sell the product if you ever wanted to in China. But there have been stories that it can actually interfere with your manufacturing as well, that they can block you from manufacturing and exporting the product from China. I have mixed feelings on, I've heard stories, and very few and far between. I've also heard that the government in China, tries to crack down on that because, obviously that could be a huge threat to their manufacturing if everyone's getting dinged every time they launch a product. But it's so easy to just get a trademark in China. You might as well file it. You also have to keep in mind some countries have different rules. So in America, a trademark is granted to you under common law when you first use it. It means it doesn't really matter when I register, or it matters less when I register. In most cases, this is all just sort of general talking, not legal advice. So in other words, I could start my brand and start selling my product, and maybe 2 years later I register it. I can still claim a priority date back to the date I first sold 2 years ago, right? Because I was just using those common law rights. Other countries have this called first to file rule, which says it doesn't matter when you use the product in commerce, whoever files first gets the mark. That's pretty much Europe. So in the UK, so it's there's just a lot to consider when you're going overseas. And I mean, the list can go on, but those are sort of some of the common, I'm trying to pick the things that are just the most common among all e-commerce companies.
Well, here's one that I bet you a lot of e-commerce sellers have seen. I saw it. But like, how should some of these e-commerce sellers, like, what should they do to contest a baseless claim? And that happens a lot. And, there's times that people are selling and they get this, I want to use the word frivolous, but it's a baseless e-commerce claim against them. And what should they do? What's the first steps?
Okay, so are we talking in what context? Are we talking about on Amazon? Are we talking about on the website?
Maybe they get something trademark related. Maybe they get something where it's like, hey, dispute of their IP, or you're using my image, but you shot the image yourself. There could be a lot of things. What's the most common one you see that people end up getting that they have to end up dealing with?
Well, from the Amazon sellers, it's so weaponized, right? So the Amazon sellers it's a whole different ballgame, and talking about websites is very different because we see it less on the website side of the world, right? But with Amazon sellers and TikTok, there's these weaponization of IP or even false IP complaints where people file fake patent claims, fake trademark claims, fake copyright claims, and you have to know how to deal with that. And Amazon sort of has its own internal processes for dealing with those things. It can be a really, really complicated. It can be a real pain. I don't recommend anyone go it alone. I recommend you get legal advice and work with lawyers who understand Amazon. That's the most important thing, because it's like 90% process over about 10% merit or legal analysis with Amazon. And that's something that we work on a lot, is just the process of dealing with Amazon. The cases aren't complicated most of the time. It's just the process of dealing with Amazon. Now on the website side, you can have the same thing. You can have those domain name disputes. For example, if somebody's trying to accuse you of squatting on their domain, you can have those types of issues. You can have people filing DMCA takedowns based on content on your website. Now you have options if that happens. A DMCA takedown, a Digital Millennium Copyright Act takedown, is basically just someone telling the website operator, right? Somebody might say, hey, this person's using pictures that are ours. Well, there is the law that's called, this Digital Millennium Copyright Act that was created. It sort of makes it a little bit easier to handle those, because you can file what's called a counter notice with the operator, and they should let your picture stay up. And the counter notice is basically just saying, I see what they're saying. We actually don't think this is infringement. I swear under penalty of perjury that I'm subject to the jurisdiction of this court, whichever court they're asking me part of. And that what this is really about, it's really about protecting the website operator. It's about protecting companies like Miva, right? So that they're not left arbitrating over copyright disputes. Now with patent, I wouldn't expect the operators to do very much. Trademark could be similar. Trademark could be a judgment call, but really, in my position, my opinion of if a company's if a company's blatantly infringing on trademark, like they're putting up like Nike swooshes. But if it's a question of like, if it's a judgment call, like if it's something where like analysis would have to be made, like you could see it as infringing, you could see it's totally different. I don't think the operator is going to make a call on that. And then, so, hopefully, the operator just says, go to court and figure it out. But the process, the weird thing is, we created this process, but it only applies for copyright, and that's the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. If you're being a patent, typically, I've never seen a patent applied to a website. Again, these platforms are just kind of, offering you a platform to build your shop. They're not your shop, unlike Amazon, where Amazon is sort of really the store here. On Miva, like it's like I'm gonna date myself, but it's like a way more complex version of GeoCities with a shopping engine. Is that a fair point? You know what I mean? Like, in other words, they're giving you the tools. You got to paint, right? You got to make this thing. So it's a very different legal analysis when you look at a website company like Miva versus a platform like Amazon. Amazon is very much, they'll argue they're not a store. Obviously, they've done this, but they are. It's their cash register. They're the retailer, and it's their branding on everything. You don't even know your customer. With Miva, you know who your customer is, right? Miva's not trying to, cut you off from connecting directly with your customer. That's not how these website platforms work. So there's a various difference in how, which makes the websites more fun and more freeing and more relaxing. It's just kind of funny. Like, we meet people who are like really good at one and not very good at the other, and vice versa. Like, really, I really don't meet that many people who are like, I'm 50% Amazon and 50%, my website. It's just not something we see very often. It's like either I'm almost all website and no Amazon, or I'm 10% Amazon. And then in the Amazon side of the world, it's like we're almost all FBA Amazon and like 10% shop. Miva, eBay, Walmart, those guys, like they're like aggregated, that's 10%. Or other website service providers. Like that's the difference. So it varies how you approach enforcement and defense based on what we're talking about in terms of a website service or an online platform.
I think you made one thing clear, and that is there's so many variations, so many scenarios, that this is why you call somebody like Paul and get a hold of them and talk about your specific scenario. Because, like we were saying, we're trying to talk and give as much advice as we can, but we're not going to hit everybody's exact scenario they're dealing with. And that happens. I mean, I've had lots of different scenarios come up over the last 20 years of me selling. And, luckily, Paul's been around for the tail end of some of it and helped me out. So segueing into Paul, talk a bit about SellerBasics and give some information about Rafelson Law Group and, what people can expect and what you guys handle and don't handle.
Sure. So SellerBasics is basically a service we created. It was designed with Amazon sellers in mind, but a few extras. So the idea is if you pay $100 a month or $99 a month, and it's almost like health insurance for your Amazon account. Something happens to your Amazon account, it gets sick, it gets a suspension, and ASIN goes down, so to speak. our team goes in and helps you, and it's just that $100 a month. There's no charge for our account health team to help you with Amazon stuff, right? So it's sort of a way to push back on the suspension model and say, hey, let's have a suspension model that's aligned with our clients. In addition to that, we threw in a little bit of a benefit where you can call a lawyer, sort of phone a friend lawyer for free. Quick consult, 10, 15-minute consultation with a lawyer, just anytime. It's definitely unlimited. It's limited more by topic. But so if you have a question about a letter you got in the mail that makes no sense, or you just want to expand your business, you want to know kind of what generally does it take to do XYZ, you can have that phone call. And that's all based on the premise that over my years, when I started in this practice a long time ago, 7 or 8 years ago, I just noticed a lot of people were making really bad mistakes, like really, really bad and ugly mistakes that were having really, really bad and ugly consequences. And those all could have been prevented if they had just talked to me for 15 minutes, or any lawyer, hopefully any lawyer, for about 10 or 15 minutes. And so that's what SellerBasics was about. We are in the process of launching something new, which we'll probably announce soon, that's a little bit more directed towards the non-Amazon community, because we feel like that, it's just more focused on providing that expert legal advice. But again, at a reasonable cost. I know there's some law firms out there that do these $2,500 a month programs and tell you how many pages of documents you get for that. I just don't understand that model. If that works for you, great. I don't think it works for most of our clients. I think it's better just to have that lawyer on call and try to troubleshoot issues. And then if more needs to be done, more needs to be done. But if you're needing a lawyer every month for that kind of thing, you probably need to hire one full time at that point, or you're getting close to it. And then my law firm is just a law firm. It's Rafelson Law, and we just cover everything. We've designed a law practice, or I've designed a law practice that's sort of built from the ground up, that is just focused on the needs of e-commerce sellers. My goal is to cover 90% of e-commerce sellers' needs, with the extra 8 or so percent, 8 to 10% being, when things are so deep, so subject matter specific, that we can still get, we still have those experts in our network that we can refer you to and connect you with in the event that we can't help you. But, our goal is to sort of build a scaled law firm model for e-commerce companies that give them that, 50-state international mindset lawyer, right? Because I always said at the beginning of this e-commerce venture that, opening up a store on Main Street is very different than opening up an online store, right? With an online store, you're instantaneously reaching 50 states. Oftentimes you're sourcing products from other countries. You may be selling into other countries. It's a different lawyer. It's a different mindset. And that's what we set out, I set out to do, taking my experience from all these big corporations I work with and bringing that to a sort of a website at scale that can help e-commerce businesses by leveraging their economies of scale and understanding the root issues that many of them face. So that's my little rant on that.
Yeah, no, that was great information. So again, if you're listening or you're watching, if you are living in that Amazon world, SellerBasics, SellerBasics.com, SellerBasics.com. Again, like buying health insurance, but on the legal side for your Amazon business. And then I would say for right now, if you, since Paul hasn't released this yet, if you are running a website, you're on Miva, let's say, and you have a legal question, reach out to Paul via email. It's Paul, Paul, at ecom.law. And you could definitely reach out to him that way and maybe set up a consultation and get things going. But we covered a lot of topics today. Paul, always good having you on. You're always up to date on everything going on. You're so embedded with the e-com world. We definitely appreciate it, and some great information. Any last things you want to mention?
No, I just want to thank you so much for having me on and really having an opportunity to address a different audience than we're accustomed to addressing. I think it's I really just love that, and I think it's really cool, and look forward to meeting some of the Miva folks in the future. And if you just want to say hi, feel free to shoot me an email, say hi, and happy to get to know you. We don't necessarily have to do a intense call, but just would love to get to know some of the other folks out there who are going through this and may have different issues as well, like there's a lot of stuff out there. So give us a call, let us know what you're thinking, and or an email, and look forward to meeting everyone. Take care.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks, Paul, for being on. We'll see everybody on the next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to E-commerce Revamped. Ready to take your e-commerce business to the next level? Visit Miva.com for the tools to build seamless online stores and unforgettable customer experiences. Until next time, keep your carts full and your customers happy.